Hello and welcome back to the channel. This week's video is going to be somewhat different to the norm as was last week's. I think it's fair to say that over the last few months my motivation to go out and actually take photos and make videos has dipped somewhat, but I'm glad to say that that is now no longer the case. I'm quite happy and quite motivated to go back out and start doing what I was doing all over again. That being said, my ability to actually make a video seems to have gone out of the window somewhat, and this week's video kind of emphasises that somewhat. Last week I spent most of the week in Scotland, and my plan was to pretty much make a video every day, just so that I had some videos banked. I could take the pressure off myself to go out and make videos and have them ready to air on every other Monday, but halfway through my stay I realised that wasn't going to happen. I'd been to several locations and I hadn't really captured much footage. I wasn't expecting any really good photos because of the weather, but I'd still got some photos that I want to show, but I just hadn't captured the footage. There was also some issues with the sound on some of those videos. I'm not quite sure what I did with the mics at the time, but obviously I didn't have them connected correctly, and the sound wasn't just coming through. So because of that I decided that I would just do a sort of compilation video, just explain the locations that I've been to and just briefly talk about the pictures that I've taken. And in fact I shot a bit of footage on my last day there just to explain that, to sort of explain what I'm explaining now, and that didn't quite go to plan. The first time I sat down to do it I kind of got through most of what I wanted to say and realised that the camera was just tilting away and I was going out of shot. Oh, hey Archie, come to join us. Yeah, the camera just sliding out of shot, so I reset the camera, made sure my ball head was tight, because that was the problem, and off I went again, and yeah, quite happily shot what I thought was an okay bit of footage, and then carried on about my day. In fact I even shot another bit of footage for a video that I was going to make for that day, or was going to attempt to make on that day. And when I started that bit of footage I started with the saying, "The best laid plans of mice and men going after Glee," which people probably more commonly know as "the best laid plans of mice and men often go awry," which I thought really suited, one, the way that week was going, and to the fact that it's by Robert Burns, that I was in Scotland. So yeah, I got all that, and I will say, even though I did notice that I'd cut the top of my head off, I thought that was still a usable bit of footage. However, when I came to put the video together, and in the process of transferring all my files over and back and forth, and perhaps getting rid of some files that I thought I didn't need, I accidentally got rid of that bit of footage. And to say I was annoyed was an understatement. I even tried a recovery program to see if I could get it back, but no luck there. So yeah, that's really emphasises how the week did go awry, and I've got many examples of that throughout the whole week, which is a bit of a disappointment really, because I'd gone away with sort of great expectations and then just completely failed. I think possibly I was expecting too much from my first proper trip out. But anyway, that being said, I did manage to capture a few images. I did get a little bit of B-roll, which I'm going to go through or stick up. I'm not going to inundate it because this video is probably going to be more me waffling than, or at least talking about the pictures, than anything else. So let's just jump straight into it, and we'll start off with my first location, which was Scanamorley. So on my first day in Scotland, I arrived at at my final destination, as it were. I actually got there about an hour before I was able to check into the caravan that I was staying in. So I decided I'll just go for a little jaunt down the coast. I hadn't really gone south down the coast before, so I thought I'd just go and have a look. And within 5 minutes, whilst sat in a queue at some traffic lights for roadworks, I looked out over the Forth of Clyde, and the light coming through the clouds was really nice. I mean, it was a really dull overcast day. It was raining on and off, and yeah, I could just see over the water. There was a range of mountains, which I later discovered was called Goat Fell. I had no idea what they were called, and they're located on the Isle of Arran. So yeah, got those in the background. There were some hills in the foreground, which I then later realised from looking at Google Maps was actually another little island. I can't remember the name of it. I'll probably put it up down here somewhere. And then obviously you've got the water in front, and then some sort of moody clouds and some light coming through it. So I thought that just made a nice little image. So I quickly found somewhere to pull over, got my kit out, got set up, even managed to shoot some video. And of course that didn't come out right. The sound was wrong on that bit of video. But it was just nice to spend like about half an hour or so just out taking photos. It actually felt really good. It was like I'm on holiday. First thing I've done is stopped and taken some photos and some videos. So I'm feeling really good at that point until I later saw the footage and realised that I'd messed it up. In fact, I even went out later the same day just to reshoot a bit of footage, but again, sound issues. I don't know what's going on with my kids at the minute. Hopefully it's just a case I hadn't plugged it in properly. So the first image I took was a panoramic, as I said, of Goat Fell on the Isle of Arran in the background. With the island in front of it, the sea in front of it, and then the moody cloud. I just like the way that this image is layered. Really, it's just different tones, different shapes. You can actually see the sun coming through the clouds on the right half of the image. I did convert it to black and white because it looks better. In colour, it's very bluey, grey, and just not very appealing at all. So yeah, the first picture in the bag. That's pretty much all I shot on the first day, and after that I headed off, got myself all sorted in the caravan, and got my footage transferred over, had a bit of lunch, and just chilled for the rest of the day. Yeah, it initially it was a nice start to the week, but that didn't last very long. Okay, moving on to day 2 of my Scotland trip. I hadn't really got a set plan of where I was going to go during the week. I had ideas of where I wanted to go, but some of it was very reliant on what the weather was doing at the time. But as you know, if you've been to Scotland, the weather is very changeable, and in fact it's that changeable you can go a few miles down the road and the weather will be completely different. Never mind the fact that you've just moved forward in times, 10 minutes. It's crazy. But yeah, on the second day, I decided I was going to go to Glencoe, and basically just revisit a couple of scenes that I'd visited before. I had wanted to spend a bit of time just travelling up and down. I can't remember what the road's called, but it goes up and down past Ettimore, and there's a river running alongside it, and there's just usually quite a lot of falls down there. I've shot them before, and I wanted to see if I could do anything better than I'd got. Unfortunately, when I got there, that road was actually completely closed off. So I ended up parking up on the main road and walking down the road to what is probably one of the most iconic views of Ettimore, and that's shooting across from the River Coople, or Cobble. Apologies if I'm completely pronouncing that wrong. But yeah, you shoot across the river with the mountain in the background. I say I parked on the main road, walk down the road to there. It's only about a 10-minute walk, not too bad. But as I'd already gotten into Glencoe, you could tell the scenery wasn't spectacular. It was very yellow. Spring obviously still a little way off in the Highlands compared to quite a bit of Scotland and obviously the south. But never mind. It's also quite dull. I mean, it had been raining on and off. Fortunately, at the time I got there, it had stopped raining and didn't rain at all whilst I was on location. So yeah, I got myself set up and I took a few images. I wanted to do the classic image. In fact, I wanted to do the one with the mountain. I also wanted to do with the little white cottage. Again, I can't remember what the name of that is. But I also thought I'd try and see if I can get something a little bit more intimate on the river itself. Unfortunately, the river wasn't very high. Obviously, despite the fact that it rains quite a bit in Scotland, it hadn't rained enough to keep the levels of the rivers up or any of the water in the area, to say. First image I took was the classic, or one of the classic images. I did attempt a long exposure of this one, which gave quite a nice effect with the river and the falls. Unfortunately, because it was quite windy, the trees came out all blurry, and I've got to be honest, I just couldn't be bothered to spend the time to try and sort of merge two photos together to get me the smooth water and the clear images of the trees. So I ended up going with a slightly slower shutter speed to get a bit of movement in the water, but not so slow that you got got blur in the trees. I also left the image fairly untouched. I just played around with blacks and the whites and added a slight bit of vibrance. As you know, if you're shooting raw, the image is quite flat. But I didn't go too mad with the vibrance because I wanted to show the image or the scene as it looked on the day, which is quite dull. I mean, the image could look a lot better if I shunted up the vibrance and the saturation, even just a little bit, but that wasn't the effect I wanted to go for. I have to say I did struggle a little bit with getting something a little bit more intimate with the river, and that's mainly because of the levels of the water. If it had been higher, there would have been more opportunities, but as it was, there wasn't. So basically this is just a close-up of the falls that you saw in the last image. Again, I haven't done a long exposure with this one because again, because of the wind, it would leave the bush on the right hand side and the grass quite blurry. However, again, I was able to use a slower shutter speed to add some movement to the water. I think that has come out quite well. Again, with this image, I've left the saturation alone and the vibrance alone, just purely wanting to show the colours as they were on the day. And again, if I play with them, it would have popped a bit more. And in fact, this image is slightly enhanced because it's a bracketed image. 3 separate images merged together just to give a HDR final image. But in this case, it hasn't overdone it, which is quite nice. And a final image of the day for Glencoe. Again, another classic one with the white cottage with the mountain in the background. This is actually a 6-image panoramic. Again, this possibly looks better at different times of the year with different light, different seasons. But in its own way, I find this one stands out, or at least to me it stands out quite well. It just shows the bleakness of the day, if I'm fair. I do like the fact that you've got a nice windy line that starts off in the bottom right hand corner with the road that goes sort of down to the bridge over the river, and then you can sort of follow the river around in front of the cottage and then back over to the right where it kind of zigzags a bit, and then looks like it joins a trail that goes up through the middle of the mountain up to the snow bit at the top. I did like the fact that there was still some snow kicking around and I was able to capture that. I have previously done a panoramic of this. I think the last time I went I had my Nikon D850, which, yeah, it's a good camera, but since I upgraded to the D850, obviously I can capture a lot more detail, and that shows in this picture. When you zoom in, you can see sort of a vast amount of detail in the mountain. In fact, you might not be able to see it on this, but on the bridge there is actually a man who's taking a walk through the scene. Again, this image, I've only played around with the blacks and the whites, and in fact I've taken the vibrance down a little bit, because when I stitched it together, it kind of did some of its own magic with the colours, and it was too vibrant if I was trying to relay how the day looked, so I took that down a smidge. I did actually have to take it into Photoshop, and just a little bit to the right of the bridge, just behind a bit of the land, you could see the top of a 4x4 vehicle, which, although you couldn't see it massively, kind of detracted from the image, so I kind of took that out. You'd never know it was there. That's the only sort of big thing I did with that image, other than I play around with the black and whites. But overall, I think this image has come out fairly well. This is probably my favourite image of the week, if I'm honest, and that's even considering it wasn't the best light or conditions. On to day 3. I have to be honest, once I got back from Glencoe I was feeling a bit rough, and I think at that point I was thinking, oh, perhaps I've already done too much this holiday. I've been working fairly hard, and I should perhaps just rest a bit. So I had a look at where else I wanted to go, and I almost got to the point where I was thinking, oh, day 3, I'm not actually going to go anywhere. I'm just going to relax in the caravan, perhaps go for a wander, and just chill out all day. However, I did change my mind. I decided I wanted to go location. I wanted to go to Belhaven Bay, which is on the east coast of Scotland. There's a bridge there on the beach that quite literally goes nowhere, and it's called the bridge that goes nowhere. And I'd already previously looked at the tide times, because I wanted high tide, and it was either going to have to be very, very early in the morning with no light, or mid-afternoon with the wrong type of light. So I thought, right, I'm going to go and check the site out. I don't need to be there till mid-afternoon, so I can just spend the morning relaxing, just doing nothing, which was actually quite nice, and then head out over to Belhaven. So I knew in advance that yes, I was going to get the tide, but I knew I wasn't going to get the light I wanted. This location is probably best done sunset, sunrise, and I also kind of knew that the sun was going to be in the wrong location for me to do any real justice to this image, or even to get a really decent, or even a decent image. So I saw this little jaunt as a scouting trip, because I know later in the year I'm in the northeast of England, and it won't take me long to go back up to Belhaven and hopefully revisit it in the appropriate conditions. So I say I just went along just to see what I could see, just scout out the area. In fact, it just turned out to be quite a nice afternoon. It was nice and sunny, wasn't too hot, there was a breeze, and it just felt like being at the seaside. I just was able to relax for a bit, took a few images, and chilled out for a couple of hours before heading back. So if we look at the one image I did take, there's quite a few things wrong with this image. On reflection, one is the horizon level. Yes, I could have altered that in Lightroom, but I didn't. Also, as you look at the image, you can see the sun is hitting the image sort of from the left, so it's like pretty much face on, which is not ideal. Even if I'd have done this at sunset, the sun wouldn't have been right, because it would have been in the wrong position to give the right sort of light for the image or for the bridge. The bits I don't like about it is the fact that you can still see a bit of the mainland in the right hand side of the image, and that's actually a golf course. I did manage to capture this image when there wasn't any people on there, and I also don't like the white streaks either side of the bridge. These are caused by continuously breaking waves. Obviously there's the nature of the land underneath that particular area of sea causes the waves to break there. So yeah, this image definitely needs either sunrise, sunset, possibly shooting from the other direction, so I'll be shooting more inland, though I think you could shoot it so that you wouldn't actually see much of the land if you get to the right angle. And also, yeah, you need that nice light, a bit of cloud in the sky and the nice light from either sunset or sunrise. So this is one I plan to visit later on in the year, and hopefully do justice to it. I've seen plenty of images that do. So moving on to day 4, which was actually my final day in Scotland. By this time I'd come to the realisation that things weren't going to plan with my video recording, and yeah, so for this particular day I thought I'm not going to go gallivanting all over the place just to try and catch an image. I'm going to stick fairly local. I'm going to just head south down the coast and see what I can see and video the journey. I actually started off by going back to the location that I'd visited on day 1, just outside Skellamorley, and again I reshot a bit of video which didn't work. So I did take another image of Goat Fell at the time. That was another panoramic, which I'll show in a minute. That's come out quite well. And then after that I moved off further down the coast. I actually only visited, well, took images at one other location, which was Porton-Cross, and I came across that purely by accident. I was travelling down the road, saw a road sign for a car park and the name of the place. I thought, oh, just pulled off and went to it, and I'm glad I did, because it was a nice little area. The rest of the day not the rest of the day, for the next hour or so I then continued to travel south down the coast, but most of the places that I was going past were just built up town areas, and the couple of occasions I did pull off, just get towards the coast, there was nothing really worth shooting. So I decided, right, I'm going to stop travelling now and head back to the caravan, get something to eat and rest. And then my plan was to go off and visit the Loop of Fintry, which I'd done on my previous visit, but it just chucked it down. So the weather was awful, the conditions were awful, but on my last day the weather was looking promising. The sun was going to be in the right location for sunset. We weren't predicted to have any rain. and at the time it was quite nice, so I decided that I would go. However, after about an hour or so of travelling, I hit a diversion, which wasn't too bad. I thought that was going to scupper things, but it didn't. So I got back on track and got into Fintry, and I was only about 3 miles away from the location where you park to get to the loop. But as I hit the edge of Fintry, there was another road diversion, because they'd shut off the one road that led to the parking location. They'd shut it off completely, about half a mile outside of the village, and I needed to go for 3 miles. There was another diversion in place. However, once I set off, after about 10-15 minutes, I was thinking, we're completely going away from where I need to be. Had a look at my sat nav, and it became obvious that it was going to take quite some time to sort of work my way around to the loop of Fintry. It was probably going to take well over an hour, and if I'd have done that, I would have just completely missed sunset, and there would have been no point being at that location because it would have been too dark. So at that point I just decided I'd had enough. I thought I'll go home. A few minutes down the road I was thinking, actually I'm kind of the west side of Loch Lomond, and I know, hopefully I'm going to pronounce this right, Malaraki Bay. It's on the west coast, so stuck the location in my sat nav. It's like 22 minutes away. I thought, oh, great, I'm going to get there for sunset. So I headed off. It was really nice actually, despite the fact that the water level was quite low and quite away from the lonely tree that I was going to shoot. The weather was nice. There was some cloud in the sky. Wasn't blocking the sun. Wasn't perfect conditions for sunset. The clouds were perhaps a bit too dark and heavy, which ones were there, but we did get some light. Had a chat with somebody who's fairly local and been to that site, that location quite a few times. He was telling me about the different images he'd got and showing me a few, and just generally had quite a nice chat, and it was just a nice, pleasant, relaxed evening. And I think I got a couple of images. I even, at that point, I got some videos, so I came away feeling really, really good. But then I discovered that I'd failed with the sound yet again. The constant theme through this week has been that the sound has just been shocking, and I really need to sort that out, which is a shame because I actually got a reasonable amount of video at that location. So let's just have a quick look at some of the images I caught that day. Here we have another image of goatfell. This is a 6-image panoramic. Very different conditions to the first time I shot it. It's grey, overcast, raining, and later in the day. This particular image was taken probably about mid-morning. Nice blue sky. The clouds were all behind the mountain range, and yeah, the view was a lot clearer. I could have done this picture in colour, but it's a little too blue. It was just a bit much, so checked it out in black and white, and it's come out really quite nice actually. I'm quite happy with this image, and with the cloud being behind the mountain range, you actually can see that there's still some snow on the top of these peaks as well, which I thought was quite nice. Right, second image of the day is again of goatfell and surrounding peaks, but from a slightly different angle. On this one you can't see see the snow. This one was taken from Porton Cross, and whilst I was actually at this location, I did see a submarine. I thought initially it was going to go behind the Isle of Arran, but it didn't actually came across. And yeah, if I zoom in a little bit, you can actually see that the submarine is in the image, which I don't know, I thought was quite nice. There's nothing really to write home about, but I like the fact that I managed to capture it. Again, because it was quite a sunny day, this image has just turned out working better in black and white. It's not bad in colour, though I think just the blueness of the sea kind of ruins it a bit, but yeah, it does look better in black and white. Whilst at Porton Cross, I also took a little bit of a stroll further away from the car park that I was in when I took the last image, and I came across this colourful rock formation, a mixture of kind of a dull orange, brown, blacks, the green from some lichen, and the yellow as well. I thought it just looked really nice. So I had this idea that I was going to shoot that with GoFal in the background. My initial plan was to do a focus stacked image of this, obviously with that being made up with 3 images, one focusing for the foreground, one focusing on the rock sort of in the middle of the image, and then one focusing on GoFal in the background. But for some reason, when I was focusing on the foreground and not on the midground, I just couldn't quite get my lens to focus properly. It was just coming back a bit blurry. So this one, I think I just sort of focused for the midground and just took a couple of snaps, and they've actually come out really, really well. I know the mountain range in the background is not as clear as I would like it to be, but the fact that most of the foreground is, it is more than good enough for me. Again, because this was a raw image, I've had to chuck in a bit of vibrance saturation. I'm not going over the top, but I have made it probably a little bit more vibrant than it was on the day. And I've also stuck a grad filter onto the sky, just so that I can reduce the exposure and bring out more definition in the sky, and possibly made it a little bit bluer than it was, or a little bit more saturated than it was. But overall, I do like the effect of this image. I've got to say, I hadn't actually touched this image until just before I started shooting or recording this, and you know, I was quite pleasantly surprised with the way that it's come out, and it's kind of more than made up for the fact that I've messed up on quite a bit of the video footage. And then for the final image from this location, again it's just a landscape rather than a one by one shot of the same area. You can see more the foreground, more the browny orange rocks in the foreground than on the previous one. Again, I've added a touch more vibrance and saturation than you could see on the day, and again I've stuck a grad filter onto the sky just to bring out a bit more definition in the clouds. This one's not as bright as the last one, but yeah, I do quite like it. It's good. It's just nice and colourful, and yeah, that wasn't typically how my few days in Scotland were. And now moving on to my final few images from Milleraki Bay, and in fact the final images from my trip to Scotland. This image and the next couple I've got to show you are nothing spectacular in regards to that. I could have had better light conditions, could have also had a higher water level. In fact, I've been told and have seen images where the water level is such that it actually completely surrounds the base of this lone tree. But hey, you take what you're given. As I said, this was just a really nice evening, and was a great way to end my trip. So in this first image, again, there's many similar images that you can see on the internet, but I was quite pleased with this one, that I managed to capture the sunstar, or a sunstar, and also I was quite happy the fact that I managed to capture it when the clouds had sort of moved to the left of the tree, because for some time they were just sat behind the tree, and stopped it from standing out so much as it does in this image. I say not the greatest image in the world, but it's one I'm relatively happy with as the snapshot goes. This next image is a landscape panoramic, as in the camera's in landscape mode, not portrait. Again, nothing to write home about with regards to the subject matter. I'll say it's just the hills and mountains the other side of Loch Lomond. However, I just like this image because of the light. It's almost, but not quite, captured the way the light looked over the hills and mountains. It looked, but there was more detail, or I could see more detail than I managed to capture in this image. But the light in the sky above and in the clouds is just so subtle and so nice, that I just had to capture it. So it made me happy. I think that's what this is. That's all I can ask for. And my final image, this was, I think sunset was more or less over. The sun had gone down behind the mountains and was probably below the horizon, but I just hung around just to see if anything was going to happen with the clouds. Now the clouds were quite dark, so I wasn't expecting much, but we did get this nice dark pink reddy glow underneath the bottom edge of the clouds, which I thought was quite nice. And by the time I got this, the cloud had moved sort of into the image. It was quite far off to the right hand side, but moved quite quickly into the position it's in this image. What I also like, I don't know if you'll see this until I tell you this, but the shape of the cloud is kind of reminds me of one of the Imperial destroyers in Star Wars, which did make me chuckle a little bit. It was either that or it looks like some kind of iron with the handle on the top right hand side to hold it with, like one of the old, similar to one of the old Star ones that you used to have to heat up in the fire before you could use it, rather than the electric ones we've got today. Yeah, that was the last image of the day, and I say that was quite a nice way to spend my last evening. So I hope you enjoyed having a look at those images with me. As I say, a lot of them aren't the greatest images in the world, and whenever you go out, you're never guaranteed to get the right light, the right conditions to really do justice to the images you've taken. I think it's more important just to be out there and enjoy being out there, taking photos, and just practicing your art. It was certainly good to get out, and once I realised the week wasn't going the way I wanted it to, I think I felt a lot better about my actual time away. I think the first few days I was a bit frustrated, a bit down about the way things were going, but the last couple of days and the way I approached it made me feel a lot better, made me enjoy my time away more, made me appreciate it being away more, because I sort of took the pressure off myself from actually making videos. So hopefully on my next trips away, I'll remember that and enjoy my time a bit more, and hopefully do a better job of just capturing the video, perhaps just take a bit of the pressure off myself and do a better job. So hope you've enjoyed today's video, possibly a bit longer than what I wanted it to be. In fact, looking at the time of just this bit of footage, yeah, it's going to be one of the longer ones, so sorry about that, but that's just the way things have turned out this time. Hopefully next video will be a lot shorter. In fact, I'm planning it to be a lot shorter. All being well, I'll be out in some local woodland enjoying the bluebells that are blooming at the moment. Okay, so if you'd like, please like and subscribe. I do like to see those numbers go up. They're not very high and they don't go up very often, but just the odd one or two figures going up does please me. I'm not, as I've previously said before, I'm not in this to get all the likes and all the reviews. It's more for me, but just the odd one would be nice every now and again, just to show that I'm reaching a few more people. Okay, that's it for this week. See you in the next one. Bye for now.